Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Kayla. Today I am bringing you guys some of my tips for embroidering on polos. I have a very small order today. We are doing just 2 simple polos, and I am going to show you guys all of the tricks that I have learned along the way. Some of them you may have already heard of. Hopefully some of them will be helpful, but I know polos can be tricky because some of them have more stretch than others, some of them are thin, and polos can be expensive and we don't want to mess them up. So I hope all of these tips help you. Tip number 1 is going to be using a 7511 ballpoint needle, not a sharp. You're going to want a ballpoint because the tip of the needle is a little bit more round. So instead of piercing through the fibers of the shirt, it's going to somewhat move them to the side, and that's really going to help you get a crisp, clean design on these polos. The way that they're stitched and the way that the fiber content is of the polos, you're really going to want that instead of a sharp. You're going to reduce the risk of putting holes in your garment, ripping it. So 7511 ballpoint. Okay, the next tip is going to be offsetting your stabilizer. And what I mean by that is you have one piece of stabilizer, right? With polos, you're going to use cutaway. You don't use tearaway. That's how you're going to get puckering and really distort your image. This is one of those cases where if you wear it, don't tear it. I don't believe that's a hard and fast rule, but in this case, it is absolutely necessary. So we have our one piece of cutaway. Now, just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to show you what we're going to do. So on your poly mesh stabilizer, you have the weave mostly going one direction. So instead of putting them both the same direction, what you're gonna do is you're gonna put the other one at like a 45-degree angle, and that's gonna help reduce the stretch of your stabilizers, okay? So what I'm going to do, my polos are black, and I don't have big black stabilizer, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to spray with my adhesive spray this black one on here, and that's going to be what shows on the black polos, so that on the inside it's not bright white. So that's what I'm going to do. If you've seen any of my other videos, you know that I accidentally bought the wrong size of all of these little teeny tiny squares, and I'm trying to not let them go to waste. So that's why I'm using these, okay? So I'm just going to spray and then put it offset like so. So this is exactly how we are going to do it. I have done this ever since I saw it in one of the Racoma Facebook groups, and it has made such a big difference in the quality of my stitching on polos. Okay, tip number 3 is going to spray your stabilizer directly to the inside of your shirt. So we have our polo right here. Like I said, these are just black basic polos. These are Port Authority polos. These are actually really thin. I can hold it up and completely see through it. So these are very, very thin. Our design is going to go on the left chest, okay? So paying attention to what side we're on, we are going to flip this inside out. Flatten out the shirt as much as you can. Get all of these wrinkles and folds out. And what we're going to do is we're going to spray the back of our stabilizer like this. And we are going to place this directly onto the shirt. This is going to help us immensely. Now we are going to flip it right side out, being very careful not to lift it up. And this is going to help us because when we hoop it, if you were to just normally hoop it and not spray the stabilizer to the shirt, you have your stabilizer and then your shirt, and your shirt as it stitches is going to move on top of the stabilizer. Even if it just slightly moves, you can have puckering, you can have registration loss. There's several issues that you can have. So spraying your stabilizer directly to your polo is, I can't even tell you how much it's gonna help. Okay, my next tip for you guys, I know it's gonna be an expensive tip, to use a 5x5 mighty hoop. You don't want to use a hoop that's too big, and you obviously don't want to use one that's too small. The 5x5 mighty hoop is absolutely perfect for polos, and I prefer the mighty hoop just because of its security. If you use a regular hoop and you had to press in the top one, you're stretching that top layer, and when you hoop a polo, you really, really do not want to stretch the material. You really want it to just be snug right from the get-go, and that's where the magnetic hoops really, really help. If you pull on it after you get it in to, you know, tighten out your shirt, make it flat, get that, you know, drum sound, make sure it's perfect, you can really, really get puckering and distort your image. And then once you take it out of the hoop, it's gonna bounce back together, and you're gonna be super bummed that your design didn't turn out how you wanted it to. So the benefits with the Mighty Hoop is, you know, you have your magnetic one and then it just snaps right on, and it's perfect, especially if you're using the Mighty Hoop stand. It's flawless just about every time. And if you can't afford the Mighty Hoop stand and a Mighty Hoop, believe me, I get it. It took me a long time just to be able to afford these ones. Then when you're hooping, I would try to make sure you get it as snug as possible without having to loosen or tighten it at all. You really just want it to be perfect on that first shot, and definitely do not pull your shirt tighter once you have it hooped, because you will most likely get puckering. So if you don't have that, just do it very, very meticulously. Be careful, re-hoop if you have to, but just make sure you do not pull it once it's hooped. Okay, so you can see right here, I have my shirt on the Mighty Hoop stand. I have it lined up where I want it to go. Looks pretty straight on to me. And the beautiful thing about this is I can just, and it is straight and good to go. I do not have to pull it tight or anything. It is absolutely perfect. So 5x5 Mighty Hoop and the stand would be my next tip for you guys. Okay, so you can see we have it hooped exactly how we want it. Now, my next tip for you guys, I have to admit, isn't something that I do all of the time. Sometimes I will on certain crew necks, but that is to hoop it basically upside down and put it on the machine through the bottom of the shirt versus through the collar. That is because sometimes the collars can be really, really tight, and you know, as the sewing arm moves and everything, it really stretches and you can get loss of registration. A lot of times I don't have that problem because I just continue to undo the rest of the buttons, and I usually don't have a problem with that. Okay, so that creates a lot of room for me. This is a very small logo, so I don't anticipate anything. If it was a big, wide logo, then I probably would. So I'm going to hoop this on through the, or put this on the machine through the collar like I normally would. However, a lot of people flip it upside down and go through the bottom of the shirt just because you have so much more room to be able to go on. Okay, so if you're finding that you get loss of registration or that the collar is just too tight, like I said, certain crew necks have really, really tight collars, then try going through the bottom of the shirt instead of the collar. And now my last and final tip for you guys, obviously I still have to cut the stabilizer off of that, so just ignore that for now. But my last and final tip for you guys is to make sure that it is actually digitized for a polo. I am not a digitizer by any means. I can barely use the auto digitize feature, okay? I've taken classes, I'm learning, but I'm not there yet. But I do know that there are different densities that you need for different materials, different push and pull compensations, you know, for hats, polos, totes, towels, you know, the different thicknesses, they all need different settings. So make sure that your design is digitized specifically for a polo. Give your digitizer all of the necessary information for you to get a clean, crisp design, exactly like what we have here. They are going to know exactly what you need if you give them the proper information. So you are just setting yourself up for success by giving them as much information as possible. I get a lot of questions about who I use for my digitizing, and this isn't like a sponsored thing or anything. I just love them. I use Dream Digitizing. They have really fast turnarounds, reasonable prices. This logo I got in 2 different sizes because these polos also get the same logo a little bit smaller on the back, and it was $10 for the 2 different sizes. So I absolutely love that company. I rarely have to request an edit. If I do have to request an edit, usually it's because I need a different size, like the customer wants it just a little bit bigger, or you know, whatever. So those are usually the only edits that I have to request. So I love Dream Digitizing. They are just about the only people that I use. So that being said, make sure it is digitized correctly. I know a lot of us just buy a font off of Etsy or an image off of Etsy and assume that it's going to embroider on anything, but we don't know the settings that those were digitized to. You know, so I've seen a lot of people buy a design and want to put it on a hat, but with a hat it has to be in a certain order, and so there's just so many different things that come into account with embroidery designs. So make sure it is digitized specifically for a polo. And here is the final stitch out up close. You can see it is super crisp and clean. And the shirt's a little wrinkly, but there's around the stitching, there's absolutely no puckering. It looks absolutely perfect. So I'm really, really happy with how this turned out. So those are my tips to help you embroider polos. I hope that you found these helpful. I hope that you guys are able to implement them in your business to help you guys maximize your productivity and your expertise. Leave me a comment down below if you have any other tips and tricks that we can learn from and use in our own businesses, or just say hi, because I love that too. Make sure you subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I will see you in my next video.